encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network.
You know what time it is, no matter where you've been. So let's do it again. Listen up and let the sun shine in. We've got soul training. Time to practice what you preach. Ooh, yeah. Yes, we do. We've got soul training.
And here's Daniel, Alan, and Joe.
Hey, Joe, what would you define as a perfect morning?
Ooh, perfect morning. Perfect morning's going to be good weather. It's going to be, there's going to be some good breakfast in there. I like pancakes and waffles and bacon and eggs and that sort of thing. And actually I like, for those in certain regions of the U.S., my favorite thing's probably chocolate gravy and biscuits.
Oh,
so
man.
That would be involved. Let's see. There would be no rush to get things done. We'd have plenty of time because usually in the mornings right now, it is like a mad day. You know, on Home Alone, whenever they wake up and they're late for the airplane, that's every morning at my house, basically getting everybody to school and stuff.
Like a fire drill?
Pretty much. And so that wouldn't be happening. Let's see. What else? Maybe I wasn't prepared for this, but I'm liking this experiment. I'll stop right there. Daniel, what's your perfect morning?
I'm enjoying your perfect morning.
I'm enjoying your perfect morning.
I would add to the equation, I don't think you've mentioned coffee. There would need to be coffee involved.
Yeah, I don't drink coffee.
Oh, man, I thought you were a Christian. But
how do you drink your coffee?
In a cup, usually.
Black?
I'm not racist about my coffee. I'll drink it black or I'll drink it white.
Really? Just all of it?
Wow. Now, I don't like it.
Wasn't ready for that.
I don't put sweetener or sugar or anything in it, unless it's
cream's okay, but no sweetener.
Cream, no sweetener. Now, it doesn't mean I won't drink a coffee drink. One of those espresso drinks that is sweetened, but just for my cup of coffee.
Perfect cup of coffee, maybe a little cream, no sweet.
No sweet, yeah.
Nothing else to add other than so you appreciate my perfect morning plus coffee.
Plus coffee, that's right. And the coffee, it needs to be Tanzanian coffee.
That's the best.
I go and I bring home several kilos every time I go. And matter of fact, right now,
kilos
of coffee. Yeah, to clarify there.
Yeah,
I mean, it's outside America, so you buy it in kilos, not pounds.
Yeah, I wasn't ready for that one either. I wouldn't. Wow.
Anyway, so right now I have enough Tanzanian coffee left for one more pot.
Is it strong?
You can get it strong. There's medium dark, and there's dark. And the dark is stout.
You guys and your caffeine addictions.
Sorry.
I wake up, and I'm as awake as I'm going to be the rest of the day. Y'all, you're groggy. You got to press the button on the thing to get the coffee going.
The caffeine doesn't really seem to affect me. I wish I could harness the power.
You got real excited about it.
I've got a pour system. That's what I use. My son, he's against plastics, which is hard. I don't say how he pulls it off in life, but he doesn't always. But I just heat my water, and I have it's kind of like a giant flask. And I put the coffee in there and then pour the water over it, and it just pulls down in there. So that's a perfect morning for me. Yeah,
perfect morning's coffee.
Perfect morning for me. My perfect morning is I like to get up between 4:30 and 5 when everybody's asleep, the world's asleep, and just kind of think about my day. And I always start out with 3 drinks at the same time. I have ice water, whole milk, and black coffee, and I'll line those up. And then when I get to work, I get more of that. So
you put your whole milk in your coffee, you got a latte.
No.
You put the water in the coffee and you got an Americano.
No.
Put both in there, you got a mess.
My cup's not big enough. But
anyhow, what are we getting
perfection. To? Perfection. That's perfect for me. But perfect for me is, and I do like Joe's perfect morning. But I think we all can kind of have a different definition of perfection, of what it means to us. But perfection for us means that we are doing our best. Is kind of where I'm going with perfection. We're doing our best. Always when I used to coach that practice doesn't make perfect, but perfect practice. Well, I was going to say, what did I say? Not perfect practice, but your effort, your perfect effort makes a perfect practice. You're doing your best, and God knows in James chapter 1, verse 4, I'll just jump that, 1 John chapter 1, verse 8, God knows that we are not flawless. We're not flawless, and we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to have that perfect. What you all described is achievable. You'll get to get up tomorrow, and that's my plan. I'm gonna
my perfect morning. It's not achievable. It's not for a while.
There's an opportunity that
what time's the chocolate gravy going to be served?
Yeah,
we can really achieve that, but we're talking about spiritual matters or just life in general. God knows that we're not flawless, and we know we're not flawless. So why should we put that kind of pressure on ourselves and then have that kind of expectations for those around us? As a parent, I've seen that really go wrong too. That I've seen when I was coaching, I ruined a lot of NFL careers. That's why I quit coaching. People stopped speaking to me when their child didn't get drafted and all those things. But I've seen that go south where a lot of parents expect perfection from their children. And the parents never realize that their child's not going to be perfect, and that's okay.
Well, that's true. That's true. It's not going to be, and sometimes that's a hard pill to swallow. But maybe it's just me, but have you guys ever looked around and you've seen someone trying so hard to be perfect this is a Christian podcast. So we're going to keep it to religion. Trying to be so perfect in everything they do that it really is a burden to them. Mm-hmm. And it just seems like Christianity there's going to be some burdens with it, but trying to be perfect is not what the Lord had in mind. I've always heard that He was perfect, so we don't have to be. Mm-hmm. Well, Paul mentions it doesn't mean we should go about sinning just so that grace may abound.
Shall we abound in sin? Shall we continue in sin so that grace may abound? May never.
Right, and certainly not. He says so.
Right.
So we want to do our best. We don't want to sin, but you're going to. And so when you do, if you're a member of the church, maybe that's a time for reflection. Man, I got to work on that. Move on. Don't let that wreck you.
What did you say that Jesus is? Say that again.
He was perfect, so we don't have to be.
Yeah, and that makes me think of Matthew 11:28, that Jesus invites rest, not pressure.
Yeah, right. And so any discussion on perfection in your Christian walk, we have to bring in the topic of grace. Because I got news for you. I ain't perfect, and y'all ain't perfect neither, and neither is anybody listening out there.
Right.
But one of the things I wanted to get across on this podcast was, if you're a baptized believer, there is a continual washing away of your sins. Mm-hmm. If you have stumbled, you're going to be okay. Don't continue in sin.
Right. Don't rebel.
Practice.
You can't do that. You can't continue in sin. You can't rebel. But if you stumble, if someone cuts you off in traffic and you think something you shouldn't have, mm-hmm. well, then you've got a chance to reflect and to redirect next time. If you do it every time, well, then we got something you probably need to work on.
Right.
But if you stumble, it's not the end. That's not going to condemn you, that one. It's about walking in the light instead of walking in dark.
We can't change what's happened, but we can change what happens next.
Yeah, right. I really feel like I'm trying to give permission to sin. That is not what I'm trying to do here.
I will, because Daniel, I want to hear what he has to say. You did remind me about people cutting you off. And this really happened to me.
Is this a school bus story?
No, no. This is totally, the irony in this is about a year ago, I had an opportunity to go to our convention center over here close to us and participate in a literal program all day long called All About Jesus. Prepared for a lesson. The title of my lesson was Jesus, Our Lawyer. and had a great, when I say a great lesson, it helped me. That's where I was going. I don't know how great it was, but it was good for me. And had participation. My son came over and all those things. And then as I get in my vehicle, a beautiful spring day, I'm coming out of this little town on the phone with my wife. I thought my windows were more tinted than what they are, but apparently the guy on the motorcycle behind me could see that I was holding my phone away from me, and I was going probably 12 miles below the speed limit because I'm that kind of driver. And
distracted driver.
Slowing. And when I'm distracted, I do slow down. And this guy, I thought I was in a movie. He buzzed around me, pulled up at a red light. And I kid you not, I thought that he was going to get off his bike. And I was on the phone with my wife, and I told her, I said, look, here's where I am. If something happens, I want you to know where I'm at, where I am. Call somebody if I stop talking. This guy was irate. He was irate. And here, I just finished a lesson talking about Jesus and being transformed and the love and compassion. So I didn't respond to the guy. I will admit to you, I had my window cracked, but when he started yelling at me at the red light, pointing his finger at me, waving his fist at me, it had his light not turned green, he would have got off his bike. My window was cracked, and I rolled my window up. I'm like, I'm sitting here. I'm like, I don't want to fight anybody. I want to go home.
So were you in a suit?
Yes, I was in a suit, and I was trying to enjoy my beautiful Saturday afternoon. And I just had studied about the softness and humility of Jesus, and I was not even provoked or upset, so not that I was being perfect, but my response was improved compared to what it would have been maybe 10 years earlier. So for me, it's not perfection, but it's growth.
Right. Okay.
Thanks for going on that journey with me.
I think we're talking about people that are maybe too hard on themselves, trying to be perfect, feeling like they have to be perfect. And ironically, maybe where that comes from is actually not being hard enough on themselves. I think most of us are not hard enough on ourselves. And what I mean by that is that if I think if I feel like I'm this close to perfect, if perfection is attainable, I'm within reach. If I just tried a little harder, I could get there. Then that puts a lot of pressure on me. I don't know if this analogy is perfect or not, but I feel we recently had an NFL draft, right? Not supposed to mention that because we're trying to be
it's
evergreen.
Okay.
But
what we did.
Yeah, we did. We had an NFL draft not too long ago. I felt zero pressure about whether I was going to be drafted. I didn't feel like if I had tried just a little harder, then I might have been there. There was no pressure, but somebody that felt like they were close to the NFL. Alan was talking about youth sports earlier. That's probably before we started recording. But anyway,
No, it wasn't.
Oh, it was. That was in the podcast.
It just felt like we weren't recording. But it was.
It was. Okay. Yeah, so he was talking about that and the pressure that parents put on their kids, or that maybe kids feel themselves because they feel like if they try just a little harder, then, they could get to this next level. Well, if I'm doing that spiritually and I feel like I'm really close, I'm a good person with a little more effort, I could be perfect. Then there's that constant pressure, that failure. But if you understand, back it up, Romans 3:23, all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. You're nowhere close to being a perfect person. No matter how much harder you try, you're not going to get there. You're going to fail miserably in that. I think this is the challenge for good people that are decent and moral. We can feel like we don't have, like what we really need from God is a little fine tuning, just a little. If He could do a little renovation on us, but if we understood properly the severity of sin in general, even socially acceptable sins, and maybe especially socially acceptable sins, then we would understand that what we need is not just a little renovation. We don't need just a little paint on the walls of our lives. We need a scrape to the foundation remodel of of who we are. And once we realize just how far we have to go, we realize we can't do it on our own. And we've got to have that help of Jesus. Does God expect perfection? Yeah. He expects it from Jesus. And we get the benefit of that because we're never going to get to that on our own. Now, the flip side of that, and we've already kind of alluded to that, is that doesn't mean that there's no pressure to excellence. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't try as hard as we can to moral excellence, to trying to be more and more Christ-like. The Bible says in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 10, says, "For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not of yourselves, this is the gift of God, not as a result of works, so that no one may boast. For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand so we would walk in them." So good works matter. That's what we're made for. We're created for good works, but we're not saved by them. And that's an important distinction to make. So when we're failing to strive for good works, then we're failing to meet our purpose. It's like a car that's never driven. It's not doing anything. It's just an ornament in the yard, and grass is growing around it. That's a failing. And also, I feel like I should pause here. I feel like I've been monologuing here for a minute.
You're on a roll. You should keep going. You're doing great.
Good.
Okay. Well, also, part of this
I just didn't know you were in the draft. I would have watched.
I didn't make it. I wasn't even Mr. Irrelevant.
What would your 40 be if you were in the combine?
My 40, I'm sure I can make it within a couple minutes.
Mine would be like, a day and a half.
Yeah, I was going to say mine was 3. My mile time was 3.2. It was 3 days and 2 nights.
Sorry, I derailed you.
So anyway, as far as motivation goes, there is hell. Hell is real. It's a real thing. It's a real motivator and needs to be thought about, and we need to avoid that. But also, a lot of this is relational, and if I properly understood what Jesus has done for me, then that ought to motivate me to want to be more pleasing to Him. And, just like you're in a relationship with your wife or whoever else that you have a close relationship with, you want to do things that please that person. You want to avoid letting that person down. You want to avoid disappointing that person, not necessarily only because of the consequences that could come with it, but because of your love for them, and that's a big part of our relationship with Christ. He calls us. I think he calls us into a relationship with Him where there's love, there's trust, there's growth, and there has to be room in our theology for growth. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Something I was thinking, while you were talking, it occurred to me, sometimes we hold others to a super high standard.
Yeah.
And we expect perfection out of others around us. Well, that's not fair to them. They're not perfect either.
Right.
And so, Alan, one time you had mentioned you were talking with somebody, and they stood there and looked out the window 1,000 miles away and said, Alan, people are doing the best that they can.
Oh, yeah. Whew, scared me for a minute. I thought you was going with another.
But you said that, and I guess it's not really an Alan quote. It's whoever you were talking to's quote. But that stuck with me. To have a little grace with folks around you, too, because you don't know what they're going through. You don't know how far they've come, how far they've come with their struggles. Just assume that they're doing the best that they can. Give them a little grace. Give them the benefit of the doubt.
And I think that was his point. I once shared that with somebody else, and the response was, I don't believe that. People aren't doing the best they can. But the person who said that to me, at the time was 21 versus the guy who said it to me, who's now probably late 70s. There's a different season in life. But your response was closer to what the original quoter said, that people are doing the best they can, meaning they give grace, you give grace, and you don't know what kind of struggle, and that comes with maturity. You don't know what people have battled today. You don't know where it comes from.
And we all have kind of a range where there's our successes and our achievements and the moments when we're doing the right thing, and then there's our failings. And what a lot of us do is we kind of see our success as being, well, that's who we really are. The failings are that's kind of the outlier. That's momentary before I get back to who I really am. And we judge ourselves by our successes, but then we tend to judge others by their failures. That person lied to me, that person cheated me, that person did this thing, and so that becomes who they are. That person's a liar. Well, maybe I told a lie sometime. I'm not a liar. That was a
that was a one-off.
That was a one-off. That's
Accident.
Not who I am. I'm a person that tells the truth. That person told one lie. He's a liar. You see what I'm saying? So it can be very natural to be much harder on other people than we are on ourselves, because we have a fuller picture of our inner selves and inner monologue than we do other people.
So, okay, and we've touched on this a little bit, but let's come full circle here. How are we supposed to be? So we're not going to be perfect. Trying to be is going to potentially cause you some issues with maybe pride. It's going to cause some stress. But that doesn't mean, we shouldn't be good people and we shouldn't treat others with respect. So as a Christian, knowing I'm not going to be perfect, well, then what am I shooting for? What's the goal?
I think lower the pressure, but keep your expectations high.
Mm-hmm.
I just had two quotes. My dad used to always say, when I would come home complain about mistakes I made or F's on my grade card, and he'd say, well, I always was told that if you don't make mistakes, you're not doing anything. That was his little simple way of saying it, that you're going to be in the game of life. So just, I think lower the pressure, but maintain high expectations. And, God's strength shows up in imperfection, not after we eliminate it. And that I'm referencing 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9. And he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my strength is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, most gladly I would rather boast in my infirmities than the power of Christ, that the power of Christ may rest upon me. I think stop trying to have a fear of failure and creating challenges for perfection.
And it might also be nice, if you struggle with this thing, to do some inward reflection and why are you causing this harm to yourself, trying to be so perfect? Is this something to please God, or is this something to please people? Or is this something just to please yourself because you like living in a high stress situation? I don't know.
Yeah.
But seems like if you're living your life to please God, then maybe it'd be easier to swallow if you've messed something up, and you can go to Him in prayer and talk it out, other than trying to be people pleasers and putting on a face of perfection for people.
Well, this reminds me of the conversation in the Sermon on the Mount. Early in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus challenges his audience, saying that unless your righteousness exceeds that of the scribes and Pharisees, then you're not going to enter the kingdom of heaven. So then he goes on the whole rest of the sermon, basically comparing that Pharisaical righteousness with the righteousness that his followers are supposed to have. And the climax there really is, at the end, he talks about the two different foundations. The one who hears these sayings of mine and does them, he's not the one who builds his house on the rock. When the storms come, it stands. The one that doesn't do them is like the one that builds his house on the sand. When the storms come, it doesn't have a foundation and it's wiped away. Well, I used to feel like that was talking about comparing somebody who built his life in a worldly way versus the person that built his life on the teachings of Jesus. In other words, he's concerned about righteousness. But I've come to believe that's not what's being compared here. Both houses are righteousness. It's the righteousness of the Pharisees that's built on the sand versus the righteousness of Jesus' followers, which is built on the rock. And because throughout every step, the difference was motivation. He compares, the when you're fasting or when you're giving or when you're praying, are you doing these things for public praise, or are you doing it privately so that God can see? When he talks about, you've heard it was said that you shall not commit adultery. I say, whoever looks on a woman to lust after her has committed adultery in his heart. And everything is. He gets to the motivation. So why are you trying to be righteous? Are you trying to be righteous because it makes you feel good, makes you feel like a good person, and makes people admire you, and makes you praiseworthy from other men? Or are you trying to be righteous because you are trying to be conformed to the image of Christ? Where's that motivation coming from? And that makes all the difference, I think. So when you're struggling with that desired perfection, ask yourself, why do I want to be perfect? And that why is going to be your power in getting there or else failing.
And I think it goes back to fear. When I think about fear of failure, maybe some people want to be perfect. Proverbs 24, verse 16, says, "For a righteous man may fall 7 times and rise again, but the wicked shall fall by calamity." And just a little note that, failing isn't the end, but getting back up is part of righteousness. And the only thing I would throw in, just a personal story, is, our son.
I think that right there, before you get to your story, what you just say that again, Alan?
Failing isn't the end, but getting back up is part of righteousness.
I think that right there sums up the whole thing. Mm-hmm. That's the whole episode in a nutshell, is that we need to be striving for it. But if you fall down, get back up. Mm-hmm. Now keep on going.
Well, and I parlay this into, what our son's going through, is that he's finishing up at a nursing program. It's pretty tough. I mean, they basically people are still leaving every day, and there's for him 4 days left in the semester. His cohort, they started with 120 people, and they're down to 45. And we just reassured him. I mean, every week has been a test. Every day has been, if I put a leading 0 before the decimal, then I'm going to fail this whole test. And we just reassured him early on that if you fail by those standards, that's okay. We still love you. You can sleep in your bed tonight, and you'll either retake a class or you'll just pick out something else. It's okay to fail, but it's not the expectation. But if you do, it's okay.
Yeah. In my life, in my experience, that's where I've learned the most, is when I've messed something up, because then you got to reverse engineer your mess up to figure out how to make it right.
And that's where the real learning takes place.
And I've learned a lot by doing that.
Yeah, problem solving.
Yeah. All right. Well, we're pretty well done. Any closing statements? Anything else we need to cover?
You just made me think of something else, and I won't get into that, but you can Google them. But you go back and look at how many in the last 100 years how many inventors did what Joe just said. They went out to create, like I read, or Simon Sinek, he talked about the Wright brothers. Every day they would go out and they were planning to fail. Mm-hmm. That was not their goal, but they would take whatever tools and parts they needed because they knew that they were going to fail, but they were problem solving and you learn from that. So you look at all the inventors in the last
Edison
100 years.
And the light bulb, same thing.
How many times did they fail? But we only read about the successes, but they failed too. So
keep getting up.
And another word of encouragement. Now, I may have given this spill on soul training before in the past. I don't remember, but thinking about when we think about perfection, we're thinking about fruit bearing, right? The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. And we see a failing to produce these fruits properly in our lives. And so, Jesus also said, "I'm the vine and you are the branches." Right? I'm the vine and you're the branches. Well, how does a branch bear fruit? Is it by trying harder to bear fruit? Is that great branch is if I try just a little harder, I strain a little harder, then I'm going to get a good grape. That's not how that works. It comes naturally from the connection and nourishment that it receives from the vine. And so if we find that we're not bearing the proper fruit in our life, the answer, I don't believe, is trying harder to bear that fruit. The answer, I believe, is trying harder to maintain our connection to the vine. And if our connection to Jesus is what it ought to be, then that fruit organically shows itself in our life. Does that make sense?
So
Makes perfect sense.
Maintain connection to Christ.
Right.
That's perfection.
Yeah, you need more love, you need more goodness, you need more faithfulness in your life. It's not try harder to love, it's try harder to be connected to Jesus, and then you won't help but be able to love.
Sounds perfect.
It's a pin drop.
All right, so thank you, dear listener, for letting us be a part of your spiritual conversation today.
Wait a second. You said that's a pin drop?
Yeah, like a mic drop.
Oh, I thought you... Okay. Mic drop's the term. You would say pin drop, though.
Yeah, I was saying like pin drop. That's good.
Pin
Daniel.
drop's what you hear when it's dead silent.
I'm like, that's good.
true.
That's good, Daniel.
But a pen is more valuable to Alan. For him to drop a pen.
It's more important than dropping a mic.
Exactly.
Drop my phone. Okay.
There you go.
Sorry to interrupt. Keep going.
That's all right. So anyway, thank you for listening to this episode. We'd love to hear from you. We love getting your feedback, your questions, your criticisms, your comments, your encouragements, whatever you have to say to us. We would love to hear from it. We also want to thank the elders at the South Green Street Church of Christ for making Soul Training possible. On behalf of Alan and Joe, I'm Daniel. Until next time, keep soul training.
Soul training. Time to practice what you preach. Ooh, yeah. Yes, we do. We've got soul training.
To learn more, you can email us at soultrainingpodcast@gmail.com, or you can write to us, P.O. Box 503, Glasgow, Kentucky, 42142. That's Soul Training.